It is the breakdown right here on Canadian Football Perspective. Thank you, as always, for being here with myself and at DT on SC. I am at TSN_Marsh. Still, despite all the haters, despite all of the contractual obligations, still just holding on to that Twitter account. You never know, DT. Why not, right?
What if someone else named Marshall or Marsh? What if Tanner Marsh gets a job analyzing games at TSN? He's going to have to come with the bajing to get that handle.
My main concern, I think, is Dustin Nielsen's kid, because his name is Marshall. And if Dusty keeps doing as much in broadcasting as he is, then I'm pretty sure his son is going to take his dad's job, and TSN's going to want to have that family tree. And so I'm very concerned that Dustin Nielsen's son is about to try and steal my Twitter handle for a second. If I leave it at all, he might end up taking it. So I think I'll just hold it as a proprietary part of my being for now, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Thank you, as always, for being here with us on the show. It's great to catch up with DT week in, week out right here on Wednesday mornings for you in your feed, or Wednesday afternoons, Wednesday evenings, Thursdays, Saturdays. I've seen how you guys listen to the podcast. I've checked it out. It's always fun to see. Sometimes you guys like to save the breakdown for like the long weekend drives, which I appreciate too. So we got lots of stuff for you on CFP. Before I begin, I want to give a shout out to our guys on All Canadian Tuesdays and Thursdays here on our network, because Connor and Wade had a great concept. They're always coming up with fun, creative stuff that I love. They had a great concept on yesterday's show on would have been June 22nd, if you want to check that one out in the feed. And it was a Madden, basically franchise mode style pick'em of you get 3 players here, 3 players there, offense, defense. You got to pick a quarterback, you get a coach, and you get a franchise to run in U Sports. Which I thought was super fun, because those guys know their stuff. So if you're a U Sports fan, or if you're a CFL fan who's just excited that U Sports football is coming back, make sure you're checking that out. I also saw the University of Saskatchewan signed an Oregon transfer, if I'm not mistaken. I saw the tweet on that. I don't know any of the details on it. I don't know the background or whatnot, but that was pretty cool to be able to see.
Yeah, linebacker who's originally from Calgary. I guess he played 2 years at Oregon and redshirted one in the middle, and just decided, his name escapes me on the top of my head. I'd have to go to Google, but yeah, just went, you know what? I'm coming back to U Sports and I want to play for Scott Flory. Boom, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I love that. It's encouraging to see that, honestly, when guys play at a high level program, make their way back. Like, I know Michael O'Connor didn't get much of a shot at Penn State, but when he came back and went to UBC, they won the Dan Vanier Cup in 2015 right away. And he was obviously surrounded by a bunch of other talent that certainly helped their case. But to see him come back and see the influence that he could make, I always love when I see those guys come back. I'm just flying through the mentions here. I don't think I ended up favoriting the tweet, unfortunately, of it all. But, man, there's a lot of F1 tweets in here I favorited over the weekend. That was a fun race. But anyways, let's get into some of the news of the day, because, man, the stuff that's bouncing around on the Twitter timeline for us as we're recording this on Tuesday is the retirement, CT. And you just finished up the Sports Cage. There's just retirements flying around left, right, center. It can be Canadian, American, global. It can be defensive back, offensive line. I mean, there's a little bit of everything, and we are still not really that close to training camp. I know everyone's getting excited. I know we're 40 some odd days away from kickoff. I understand that training camps we keep saying just around the corner, just around. But for me, training camp is just around the corner when we're like the week leading up. We're still 2 weeks away from the week leading up to training camp at this point. And we're already seeing these announcements come out. And I find that to be intriguing, because if this is what we're getting off the start, I wonder what we get near the end of the official offseason, or what we get at the start of training camp a couple of days in. Because even in a normal year, we're bound to get a couple of guys here and there across the league that are bigger names who either get cut or decide to retire, go onto the retired list, don't want to play this year, whatever it might be. We get that at the start of training camps, a couple of days in, when they realize, oh, yeah, you know what, this isn't for me. And at the end of training camps, when they're either actually retiring or they're going to get cut, and the team has enough respect for them where they say, hey, just so you know, we're not going to keep you here. And they say, okay, can I control my exit story from professional football here? So what we're getting here tells me that it might be an avalanche of this stuff in 3-4 weeks.
Well, and this early part of it, it's a lot of Canadian bodies. Like, there are a lot of Canadians. Montreal announced something like 6 of them on Wednesday, all Canadians. And you go, Natea J in that. Taylor Loeffler came out later from TSN's Farhan Logics. I think it was 7, and just all Canadians. And I thought, oh, I wonder if this is guys with some experience, but getting shoved out by the fact there's a double draft class.
Yep.
And this year is different because you get to bring 100 guys to camp, not 100 guys plus your non-counting draft picks, 100 guys. So I started to think, oh, this might be an effect of the double draft class. The Riders saw Brayden Tram announce, or at least it came across the wire, his retirement on Monday. And you go, well, Tram would have had some interest around the league, if not as a starter necessarily, but as a depth guy. But he's moving on. Right off the bat, there's some big name Americans and some guys who I really think would have had impact this year, but a lot of Canadians getting ushered out, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, for me, the one that jumped out in terms of Canadians was, I mean, Brayden Tram was one because I thought he was a really solid player when he was in University of Calgary, and I looked at what Saskatchewan was going to do with the offensive line. I saw your tweet where you said it was a holy bleep moment because you're going there. He carved out a spot for himself. I mean, and this is the thing. It's not guys that are niche and edge of the roster or practice roster. It's guys that have an opportunity to play and make money and live out their football dreams. But that being said, it's also the idea that our value systems, I think, have changed a little bit in the last year and a half for a lot of guys. The way that you have to try and support your family has changed because there might have not been the amount of money available for you doing other things. It's not impossible to replace $65,000 as a minimum salary either if you're doing a decent job and you're working, 5 days a week otherwise. So there's a lot of factors that go into this, I think, that's leading to the early days of it. But for those Canadian guys, outside of Brayden Tram, the other one that jumped out, I mean, Nate Jay, I love the dude. I know you do too. He's genuine, he's fun, he's charismatic, he's going to be great at whatever he does going forward, assuming that he doesn't end up actually coming back at any point. But I would have liked to have seen him in Montreal get a bit of a run, but they're a pretty stacked receiving room as well. So he would have been in tough to get enough targets and reps and all the rest to really bring some production there. Even though I do think he's a good player, it's just it's a tough squeeze. It's a tough room. I think people underrate Montreal's receiving group as it stands right now. And Taylor Loeffler, and Loeffler is not one that would have been unpredictable. I mean, you never want to predict the end of people's careers. I'm not into doing a show here where we say, who are the 10 players that DT and Marsh think are going to retire? But if I were to look at the elements surrounding Taylor Loeffler, the relative lack, and again, I use the term relative because everything in free agency is relative, but the relative lack of interest seemed like in free agency for a guy the last couple of years when he was in, I forget if he was in an 18 or 19 or whatnot, but when he was in Winnipeg, his rookie year, just sensational, like just downhill, carved out a playing style for himself, a unique, long, just strong, come down into the box, make plays on big body running backs. The coverage stuff wasn't always there for Taylor, but the body and the style of play, he carved out a role. And I think that's so great for Canadian guys. I really do. He was always a fun interview too, again, which I have a bit of a soft spot for those guys because it's great to be able to chat with a player. I remember doing a sit down with him at CFL week, I think in Winnipeg in 2017 or 18. And he came in with cowboy hat on and cowboy boots on. And he was just so happy to be in the limelight and be having fun and talking football. And so to see him go to Montreal and then bounce around a little bit, get some reps here and there. And then what was really, really weird to me at the end of his career, and I hate to say this, but this is going to be one of the things I'll remember about Taylor Loeffler, the football player. I thought he tore up his knee the week before he actually tore up his knee. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, DT, but I remember watching a game and I got like butterflies in the stomach just thinking about it because I remember watching it and thinking to myself, that's a career-ending knee injury. And they did the MRIs and the checkovers, whatever, in Montreal, apparently, and he was okay. And then the next week out, he actually tore his ACL. Now, I'm not saying the two are connected. I'm just saying it was one of the weirdest ends to a guy's career, now that we know it's the end of his career as he's retired, that I can remember in the last 5 years, where you think somebody's done, and then the next week they're actually done, and then their career is done, all within a weirdly spaced out, different dimension of time, because that's what the pandemic has done to all of us. But yeah, those Canadian guys, they're getting squeezed, I think, a little bit. The draft class is a great point that you make, because I hadn't really thought about the double draft class. There's a lot of young, motivated talent coming in that's got more recent playing experience.
Yeah, and guys who, I mean, younger is cheaper, might be better, and let's move them around. I mean, from the Riders' perspective, they lose Brayden Tram, but you go, oh well, they actually drafted Logan Bandy in 21 and Matt Riley in the first round of 2020.
Yeah.
we probably want to see what those guys are about while we have them. The one that really stuck out for me, and Corey Tyndall on Monday, I was like, wow, really?
Yep.
Ottawa lost another one. But Derek Dennis is one that caught me, and I think it caught a lot of people today. He tweeted something on Sunday that essentially said no other offensive tackle gets played around with like I do, but I still made the all-decade team. And he was very clearly mad, and I thought, oh, is something going on behind the scenes? Did Edmonton ask him something about his contract or whatever? So we talked to him today on the show, and he said, yeah, I'm not in a position with 2 young kids and a wife who's got a good career to go back up to Canada again. I'm here in Arizona. And because I know Derek a little bit, I made the uncomfortable thing about, can you make enough money, right? Because Derek Dennis is most outstanding offensive lineman, all-star in the West 3 of the last 4 seasons, Grey Cup champion. I have a picture in my mind of what the guy must get paid. I don't know for sure. We're all still working on that, but I don't know for sure. But I'm like, can you make that money in the open market in your career path? And he's like, yeah. And he didn't say I'm making that right now or I'm doing better than that now, but that's possible for him at about to be 33 years old with 2 young kids. One, he just got to see the birth of his son back last March. You go, oh, okay, I get it. So not retired, but he's ready to play maybe, but it sounds like he might be into the next phase of his life. And when Edmonton was stacked with offensive linemen, both left and right tackles, I thought, well, Dennis is the leader of the show here. But maybe they feel like, okay, well, we have Sir Vincent Rogers too. So if Dennis has to not play this year, and who knows what 22 brings, we might be okay. But
I wonder.
To lose Derek Dennis is rough.
It's so tough for those guys to come back after such a long time off going into this year. I have a hard time imagining that somebody like Derek Dennis will be able to get back into football shape, ready to go up and running and be effective in 2022 or 23. So I agree with you. I think he's still probably quietly open to playing in his mind. I mean, hell, like some guys say they're retired and we all know they're not retired. And I'm not saying that Derek Dennis is in that category, but like we just saw that with James Wilder Jr., where he said he was retired. He acted like he was retired. And we all said, bullshit. There's no way. We know you're not. You don't look like that and play like that and talk the type of smack that James Wilder Jr. does, and then see him not come back onto a playing field. So when he ended up making the announcement with Edmonton, we all said it free agency. We're like, okay, we didn't know where he was going to land necessarily, but yeah, I mean, it all kind of makes sense. If Derek Dennis were to come back and they were to announce, hey, we've traded him for a negotiation list player to, Calgary. Yeah. If they were to announce that, you and I would just look at each other on this podcast and go, yes, okay, he's back. Like it totally makes sense for him to still be in. So again, I hate to act like I say, people are lying. I don't think it's that they're lying. I just think that there's a lot of emotional decisions being made right now. And there's a lot of teams that are up against it that are trying to figure out what the best path forward is. And that combination is creating this where either Canadians are getting squeezed, they're retiring, or Americans are getting told, hey, we don't value you the way that you value you. Yeah. And the more that happens, the more retirements we will see certainly going into training. I genuinely wondered this because at this point, I still think the biggest name that's dropped is Bryant Mitchell.
Absolutely.
Because it just in terms of impact that could be made. And my question, it's an impossible question, so it's unfair to pose it to you, but just to the listeners out there is, do you think there will be a more impactful player that retires before we kick off on start of August than Bryant Mitchell? Because I do think there will be a name bigger. I think it will be somebody who's in the league. I genuinely think, and I'm not saying the whole league is going to retire and the game is going to collapse and you're not going to know anybody on the field, but I'm telling you, man, the pandemic has changed people. It really has. And I just can't imagine every single big name that we know going into the season saying, yeah, my body feels amazing. There's going to be some guys that are going to feel better than ever, stronger than ever, smarter than ever, been studying the game. There's going to be other guys that are smarter than ever, but maybe they need some time to get their bodies up in shape. And I genuinely think there's going to be some guys who are going to show up and go, what am I doing? Like I've been trying to stay in shape for so long and I'm here and it's just not happening. Like all of a sudden the wheels are not clicking and I don't know if it's going to be a receiver whose legs aren't under him or if it's a linebacker who gets back into contact and starts thinking about his long-term health and is like, do I really need to be doing this? I don't know if it's going to be health surrounded, if it's going to be about money, if it's going to be about depth chart decisions, but there's so many variables going into a long 21-day training camp period that I just have a hard time believing that we're going to come out of this and be like, yeah, there was 20 guys that retired and every team can make up for all of them. I have no clue who it's going to be. I feel like it's going to come one day. And when it does, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised if they're not looking at all the factors that are really affecting players and teams right now going into this season.
When you're talking about better than Bryant Mitchell, a guy who I would have thought would be a top 7 receiver in the CFL, you're talking about a star in this league. So you expect a star is going to fall. Like a star is deciding, I'm going home. I'd rather not.
To me, I think you're going to have somebody who is a household name who mostly, I'm not saying it's going to be, for example, Sherrod Baltimore. We just talked about Corey Tyndall. If Sherrod Baltimore retires in Ottawa for some reason, I'm just picking him as a random name because I saw it come across the timeline today for something else. If he were to retire, we would all go, wow, okay, he did some stuff, pretty decent player, but it's not going to have anybody shaking in their boots, and Ottawa's going to go, wow, man, another piece, but we can probably make up for it. If you were to have, the first name that comes to mind is Greg Ellingson, just because I think he's an impact player. I know Greg is not retiring.
But out of my cold dead hand, you can have that guy out of the league.
Yeah, but I mean, and this is the crazy thing. And again, I don't think this is going to happen, but I'm just throwing out the theory here of if we believe that there is going to be 1 or 2 really impactful players that are going to retire. Just imagine if for some reason Mike Riley showed up to camp and was like,
God.
You know what I mean?
Don't finish that sentence.
But that's what I'm saying is, but that's where I think people's minds need to be. Is that I'm not saying Mike Riley is going to, I'm not saying Greg Ellingson's going to, but I'm saying those types of players that are in the league, like if you take the top 5 players from all 9 teams, a 45 player pool, I feel like 1 or 2 of them are going to say goodbye. And that might seem crazy, but I just feel like this is such an unprecedented. And again, if I'm super wrong on this, I'm happy about it because I don't want those guys leaving the game that we all know they're top 5 players on their franchises. But I do imagine there's some conversations being had right now between spouses and husbands. And are we good? Are you going to do this? And he's like, yeah. And he gets there and he's a week in training camp. And the hardest thing is too, because Derek, you've talked to enough guys who retire, and the way that they go about this is a lot of the time, as soon as the seed of doubt creeps in, that's a really, really bad sign. Well, I think there's going to be a lot of those walls that guys are going to hit in a training camp, whether you're a rookie or a vet, that you're going to get to. And, first day, second day, okay, they're ramping us up. It's pretty slow. All of a sudden, boom, first day that we're in helmets. Okay, wow, I had a really bad day. And the thing about training camps is when you go back to your room, and for example, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they're not at McMaster this year. Usually they'd go back to their res rooms and their dining halls. But this year, because of COVID, they're staying at a hotel in downtown Hamilton. If you go back to your room and you are Brandon Banks and you had an awful couple of days, do you ride that out and you're like, I'm still Speedy B, I can still, and again, I don't think Brandon's going to be bad. I feel like I have to preface all these, but the idea that when you go back to your room, you are still kind of isolated. Like, even though the season's getting going, you're still kind of isolated, and you are going to be thinking about, wow, okay, today wasn't a good day. Tomorrow I'll make it better. Well, what if the next day isn't good and the third day is worse and the fourth day you don't improve and the fifth day all of a sudden there's some different people taking reps, and then the sixth and seventh day you start to get a sense that, oh, I'm a veteran making a lot of money. Maybe this team is interested in cutting me. Like, that, we haven't even talked about that. The idea of the late training camp cuts for teams they can find more value in different places and then replace you with younger, cheaper talent. I mean, it's the possibilities on roster movement as we get close to kickoff are endless. And I think the retirements are going to play into that, but also the teams, man, the teams and the rosters. I saw a quote from Kyle Walters saying that because they've won the Grey Cup in Winnipeg, the pressure is off externally, but there's more pressure internally because they have a ton to do. They have a crazy to-do list over the next month and a half to get ready for the season. And I mean, the transactions are a huge part of that to-do list for them and everybody else.
All right, I'm going to pull out some names and I'm going to throw them at you. What I want you to do is pretend you're a fan of that team and tell me how bad a gut punch this would be.
Okay, I'm going to do this on a scale of 0 to 10.
Okay, and just to preface this, This is not based in fact whatsoever, but can you imagine if this guy decided to retire?
Okay.
The Winnipeg Blue, this would be like July 13th. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have announced the retirement of tackle Stanley Bryant.
Oh, it's, for anybody who knows how good he is, that's a 10.
That is a 10. The Toronto Argos announced the retirement of DeVaris Daniels.
Oh, wow. That
would,
yeah, that would hurt, but I think their receiving group is diverse enough now with Rogers and Briscase and all the rest. That would be like that'd be a 6 or a 7.
This is, and I'm just going to go backwards in alphabetical order here. Saskatchewan Roughriders announced Ed Gainey's retirement.
Ooh, that's an 8.
Ouch. That's an ouch. That is absolutely an ouch. Ottawa, I'll just skip on from Ottawa.
You know what I actually wondered about is, and I find this to be funny, is what if Sinopoli were to retire? I think everybody'd be like, wow, yeah, you've done a lot. Like, we did not expect you to be a receiver for this. It might be like a 0 because they'd be like, we're so disappointed, but we're going to love you forever. And you're always one of ours. Like, it would not even really hurt people. So they'd be like, I hate we don't get to watch you anymore, but we still love you so much. And you're not really going anywhere. That's a really unique place that Brad Sinopoli has carved out. Like, I don't know if there's another person in the league who could retire and nobody would be upset or angry that has the stature that he does in his team, even if, you know, because he's carved out that like hometown hero type vibe, even though I know he's Peterborough, he played University of Ottawa and all the rest. But when I think of him, it's like he would be on a different planet in terms of fan reaction to most of these big names we're talking about.
I'm just going to Google up just to make sure, because Chad Jeter just retired from the Riders. He wants to be something like FBI, CIA, or Secret Service. So he's joining the Air Force.
Crazy.
And I go, what if the Montreal Alouettes announced that Nick Usher was retiring? A guy who was so impactful, and you thought, oh, that's really going to help that defensive line that did nothing last year. Oh, that one.
Big free agent signing for them, like that would absolutely stink for them. Here's one for you from Hamilton that I just in terms of putting your team in a bad situation. Riker Matthews is gone. What if Chris Van Zyl gets to training camp and he's like, my body's just not in the right place? And again, I think his body is. He seems like he's in a great space and all the rest. But if he were to get to training camp and say, I don't know, I don't think I can do it, or if Filer were to get to training camp and say, I don't know, all of a sudden you've got this juggling on the Ticats offensive line that has been so stable for the last 2-3 years.
Well, and Van Zyl is one of the ones I was going to bring up, because now they'd have to figure out what they're going to do with the ratio.
Yeah.
Right tackles like Chris Van Zyl are not around. So that would crush. Edmonton, again, you can have Greg Ellingson when you pry him out of my cold dead hands.
See, the formula that I usually look for is slightly older guy whose body might not respond the way he wants it to, even if he's been training a bunch, once he actually gets out on a football field, who has other opportunities in front of him. And usually the family card gets played in that equation as well. So without knowing everybody's personal history and employment history over the last year and a half, it's hard to play that game. But if you do the research on it, that combination of factors it's not usually the 22-year-old guy who's fresh into the league, who doesn't have a fiance, kids, and doesn't have any job planned. It's like that guy is willing to scrap on special teams for the next 5 years. But it's usually like, even, Colaros got married not that long ago. What if Zach was like, you know what? I'm kind of tired of concussions. And I kind of have a wife. So Winnipeg, I really appreciate it. I hate to do the Darian Durant to you, but I got to go. I got other stuff that I want to accomplish. I want to move back down to Steubenville or something. And I want to, I know he lives outside Toronto now with his wife, I believe. But the idea of a quarterback pulling the plug, like on any of the teams, a starting quarterback would just, everybody would get to 2 weeks before kickoff and you'd be like, sorry, what? And the entire league would just pause and go, okay, what do they do at that point?
Oh, knock on Toronto's door and go, is McLeod available? Because we could use him over here. Yeah, I'm with you that many more of these are coming by design or because teams kind of usher them out. And I kind of feel for every one of them for the reasons you mentioned. So it's a sad day. And then we lose the opportunity as fans to see these guys. Corey Tyndall was going to be a real nice piece of an under-talented team in Ottawa. He was going to be one of the elite guys there, and now another piece of the Red Blacks falls away. So when we get to our one big guarantees,
Yes.
I had trouble guaranteeing something that was positive for the Red Blacks because apart from their great coaching staff, yeah.
Yeah, it is tough. Yeah, so I think that's going to play into, my one big guarantee for the Canadian Football League is that we're going to see some craziness over the next
Yeah,
month and a little bit. And
agreed.
as much as you guys out there love the action, let's be real, you also love the transaction. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who will be glued to their timelines over the next while, trying to see exactly where this all goes. I don't cheer for anything other than chaos at times, but this type of chaos. I'm not a huge fan of this type of chaos because I do think that there's lives that are being changed on a day-to-day basis right now of how things are going to shake out. And hey, there'll be some positives of this stuff too, right? Like we can't forget when a player retires or leaves, somebody else gets an opportunity. So there's going to be a lot of new names I think we're going to be learning this year. And I'm looking forward to it, albeit on difficult circumstances. But you did bring up one big guarantee on this bad boy. Last week, we were talking all about one big question we had for every team, and that was just fun to throw around things that we really didn't have answers to. What's this going to look like? How's this offense going to feel? Who's going to play in this secondary spot? What are they going to do at free safety? Who's the return man? Whatever it was, you can go back and check out that episode of the breakdown from last week because we had a lot of fun with it. But this week, I wanted to flip the tables on this and just be cocky analyst guys and just say one big guarantee. And there's going to be 9 guarantees for each of us, 18 guarantees total. I kind of sort of hope that half of them are just so wrong that I get to clip these and play them back about the 3-quarter poll of the season in 2021 and say, here was our one big guarantee that this person was going to lead the league in rushing. And he's like fully healthy, played every game, and he's 14th in the league or something like that. But yeah, let's dive into one big guarantee. As always, I'll let you lead the proceedings here, DT, because you last week, going through these teams and bouncing around doing the East into the West, it was super fun to think about things that we didn't understand. And this week, I want to lean in on the stuff that we've studied, the things that we feel like we really, truly, genuinely understand and expect in what is a very unexpected season coming up.
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 that are going to make me look silly for sure as we go along here, but I'm guaranteeing you they will happen until they don't happen.
Yeah.
Let's go alphabetically this week. I want to start with the BC Lions. Marshall, what's your one big guarantee for the BC Lions?
Bryan Burnham leads the CFL in receiving yards. That is my one big guarantee. Okay. Now, there's going to be, I think, a lot of receivers that will be able to push for this, and I'm not sure whether or not it's going to be Addison or Banks where I am in Hamilton, but I think Shaq Evans has got a very good chance at it based on everything we've seen and heard from him and Fajardo's relationship. I think if you're looking at Edmonton, Greg Ellingson is going to have a great shot now that he's working opposite Terrell Walker. I think that you've got guys in Montreal who could take a run at that depending on how Vernon Adams Jr. plays, but you need a quarterback who's going to take vertical shots to lead the league in receiving. You need somebody who can make spectacular catches, and you need a team that protects their quarterback long enough to allow you to beat coverage. The last one is the concern, obviously, for BC because there hasn't been a ton of overhaul in the offensive line, but I have faith that their number one priority this entire season is to protect Mike Riley. I mean, it's not. Everybody there is wrong. It has to be your number one concern. It's the thing that makes you go offensively. They need to protect him, and if they focus in on that, Bryan Burnham gets open. He just does. And he makes great catches even when he's not open. So if Riley's going to keep slinging it, if Burnham's going to keep being the primary guy, he's entering the prime of his career if he's not already in the middle of it. I think he will lead the league in receiving yardage this year. I think that Riley will be up near the top 3 in terms of passing yardage this year. Whether or not that leads to BC winning a whole hell of a lot of games, I'm not sure. But that also might help the passing and receiving yardage totals for those guys. Because if they're down in games, they're just going to keep slinging it. So that's why I believe Burnham can lead the league in receiving yards.
The top receivers in deep targets in 2019 were Brandon Banks, Terrell Walker. 3 was Dominic Rhymes. 4 was Bryan Burnham. 2 guys that now play the boundary side for BC. Absolutely get them open. And honestly, that melds right into my one big guarantee is that BC will not allow pressure on 31% of dropbacks again this year. They were so rough. They were second worst in the league by this much better than Toronto last time out. Just relentlessly sacked. Riley on pass. Well, their quarterbacks, pardon me, were sacked 54 times on passing plays. A 9% rate is untenable. So they're going to fix that. They have personnel, right? You mentioned Riker Matthews. They'll be more solid in the interior if all those guys are healthy. And I mean, some of this is based on if they are healthy. Riley, when not under pressure last time out, was number 4. Well, I guess let's say number 4 based on attempts in passer rating when he was not under pressure. And that was with a system that I'm not in any way convinced was set up for him to succeed. It's going to be set up for him to succeed this year. They have the targets. They have, I mean, Lamar Durant will be back healthy on that field side. Shaq Johnson says, I'm the best Canadian receiver in the league.
That.
Yeah, they'll be able to run the football, but they're going to solve their problems, because I don't think their problems were all personnel when it came to allowing pressure. I think they involved route concepts and what was happening there. BC will not be pressured like that again, and thus Riley will get a chance to make Burnham the top receiver in the league.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Absolutely. All right. Next up here, I'm assuming that we are going Calgary. And if we are indeed,
Yes.
then I was going to lean extremely Canadian take here, which is that Fraser Sopik will be at or near the CFL lead in special teams tackles. But I'll go with another Canadian topic for you, and that's that I believe they will lead the league in Canadian receiving yards, reception, start, whatever you want.
Really?
I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek because they led the league just hand over fist with rookie receiving by Canadians in 2019. But I think that showed a sign of things to come for them, where I think they're going to lean a little bit more on the Canadians. Now, I understand they've got Ambles in there, correct? They've got Huff. They're going to have some of those guys, and they're going to get all their targets. Yeah, Kamara is going to be a big part of that, obviously. But when I think of kind of Canadian receiving tandems, there are some good ones across the league, but there's not a lot of guys who are in there in 2-packs, right? And I think that might be the secret. I don't know if Colton Hunchak is actually going to turn into a super productive player, but he feels like the type of player that gets taken with the last pick of the draft by Calgary, who we all look back at it 10 years ago. Why the hell was he the last pick, and why did Calgary get him? So if Colton Hunchak is going to turn into somebody, Hergy Mayal is a dude. Like, to me,
Yes.
Hergy has great ability and speed and open coverage. He can break free from man. He can separate. He has a little bit of everything. And that's why I think those two guys together, mixed in with some of the other lesser known names that they have, they could, and again, I'm saying this very sheepishly, but it's a guarantee, I think they will lead the league in terms of Canadian combined receiving.
Oh, over BC, which will run Catoy, Durant, and Johnson.
Yeah, and again, they were the one that I struggled with, because those guys are going to get their shots. But if what I'm saying about Brian Burnham is true, I think Burnham gets such an overwhelming workload that I mean, I like that trio that you just mentioned, but to me, it's like they're all going to get how many passes in a given year if they all stay healthy, which probably isn't going to happen. If they're all getting real playing time and all the rest, are they going to end up getting more than Hergy Mayala if he turns into one of the Canadian receiving stars in this league? Because they tend to, in Calgary, try to find one to really push forward. And if Colton Hunchak's subbing in for somebody and getting equal catches to Lamar Durant for some reason, again, I know that seems like a stretch because different body types, different playing styles, different positions. But yeah, I see that as being the main challenger, but I do like Calgary to try and get that done.
I like that. I like that a lot. My one big guarantee for Calgary is that their offensive defensive lines will be the thing that undoes them this season. I will not pick them anywhere near first place, though I fully understand that Bo Levi Mitchell is phenomenal, and they have a Kamar Jordan but their offense and defensive lines, there's only so many times you can lose so many players, right? Ucambre Williams, Neela Casatati are your starting tackles. You're replacing both your guards. Sean McEwen, fantastic import at center to bring in at center. But who they start at one end, I've never heard of. The other one is Falarin Arimolade, who got hurt in preseason in 2019 when he was going to bust out. So do we really know what that's all about? Derek Wigan, yes. And I like Mike Rose a lot, but I don't know that they're getting pressure off the edge, and their offensive line, there could be a lot of Bo Levi Mitchell throwaways, honestly, just looking at this. And I know coaching is fantastic. Calgary may have the best roster of coaches in the CFL. I get it. But if I'm going to dock a team like Ottawa for being under-talented, I'm going to have to dock a team like Calgary for appearing under-talented on the offense and defensive line.
And I probably should have made my one big guarantee for Calgary then that at some point, Bo Levi Mitchell will scramble on a called pass play, because if he's under pressure, you just mentioned there's going to be a ton of throwaways, and you are not wrong. But at some point in the year, Bo's going to have to take off and show us he knows how to slide. And that might be the most anticipated first down of 2021.
Can you imagine? Or he just does a halftime interview with Shinidi. He's like, Bo, don't slide. Bo, don't slide. He just runs it into the corner.
I have a hard time imagining him sliding. That's the thing. Because when you see Bo once in a lifetime take off and run, tends to get to the sideline, or he gets to a certain yardage and dives forward and gets down. But it's the idea of him like smoothly sliding. That's not something that quarterbacks practice, especially not quarterbacks that run. Like if Ferdinand Jr. were to show you how he slid, you would think he was sliding into second base stealing. Like he's just smooth and athletic, and Bo is some of those things, but doesn't usually show it off or work on it very much, I'm sure. So, the Bo Levi Mitchell scramble and slide, highly anticipated going into this year. Edmonton.
I love it.
We got next up here, I'm going to say, because of the history of Jamie Elizondo and Trevor Harris, 3 receivers over 1,000 yards. That is my guarantee for the Edmonton Elks, and that's going to be Greg Ellingson, Darrell Walker,
of course,
Armonte Edwards. I think that
those
are going to be the
Not
3
Tavon
guys.
Smith?
No, I think Tavon might get up around 5-6, somewhere in there. I think that he'll be kind of the push. The secret sauce to having the 4,000-yard receivers in Ottawa was Sinopoli, right? Because otherwise it was just going to be Ernest Jackson, Greg Ellingson, and Chris Williams. Yeah, so Sinopoli should not have been over 1,000 yards receiving. Let's be real. Like, that's not really a 1,000-yard type of guy, but he got there, and when he did, that's how they broke that code. So I think if you're going to get to 4, Tavon would be the 4th, but I don't see him getting there. I do think Greg is a lock for 1,000. I do think that Darrell is a lock for 1,000. And then my question becomes, is Armonte going to get enough yak yards, or is he going to get enough vertical push throughout the longevity of the season to be, but that Armonte Edwards is good for like a weird 93-yard touchdown or something like that, right? Like he's just that dude where he does things on the football field that make you go, huh, yeah, really good athlete. No wonder he's been around for so long up here doing his thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, because Trevor Harris is going to, whatever the equivalent of 650 passes in an 18-game season, he's going to throw the ball that much in this 14-game season. My one big guarantee for Edmonton is that they're going to make the biggest jump record-wise in the CFL. And we're comparing 18 games to 14 games. And yes, Toronto, which looks like they'll improve, did win only 4 games versus Edmonton's 8 last year. But Edmonton, just even losing Derek Dennis, looks so much better than they did last year. Coaching, question mark, because what does a Jamie Elizondo head coach team look like? I don't know, because who knows? But they've added so much talent from street free agents to CFL free agents, and they had so much talent to begin with. And they are Darrell Walker to that receiving core and that offense. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Offense wins championships. Offense wins games in the CFL. And to me, Edmonton will make the biggest jump record-wise. Part of that is because Toronto's schedule is brutal. Toronto got absolutely hosed by whatever man, woman, or computer made up the schedule. 4 against Hamilton and 2 against Winnipeg? Come on, we're trying to win this thing. And you stick us with the best team in the league 4 times? So Edmonton will make the biggest jump in record this year.
I like that, and I also loved Pinball's comments on the schedule. I believe he said that they were politely challenged, is what the Argonauts are going with. So yeah, Pinball took that one in stride, but still made a comment about it, which I thought was interesting. Next up here, let's go to Toronto's rivals, the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I don't want to steal one of your locks or your guarantees, DT, as I throw these ones around, but the one that I kind of wanted to go with was that they're going to miss Delvin Breaux. Like that was a big part of this to me was and I know that they can Frankie Williams, Jamal Roll, name we don't know yet, move Carrier Brooks to whatever you end up doing there. There's going to be somebody who's going to play in that spot. It's not going to be empty. It's not going to be a void. They're going to find a good player. They're going to put him in. They're not going to be Delvin Breaux. That's just the reality of this. So for me, that's kind of the first one that jumped up to me. And then I started thinking, and obviously we got to do an episode on the Masoli Evans thing and just throw all the numbers in the world at you from 2019, just to give people a really good insight going into camp or even in the middle of camp about what that battle is really about. But for me, my guarantee for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 2021, Masoli starts. And the reason that I say that, love Dane Evans' game, love Masoli's game, right? It's not about liking somebody more than another. I know there's a heated debate in Hamilton about style of play and future of the organization, and Masoli throws the bad interceptions in the playoffs and whatever. Okay, Dane threw some bad interceptions too. This stuff
every game.
happens. Yeah, so it's
Every game he had a pick. Really.
when I look at this, Orlando Steinauer, he can say that it's a wide open competition, but if all things are equal, if they're even remotely close to being equal, Orlando is a super principled guy, super principled, like handed down from generations of football coaches of the past. He has so much respect for players, and it's why they love him, honestly. And because he has so much respect for players, he was the defensive coordinator for the Tiger Cats when Jeremiah Masoli was like a third, fourth string practice roster type guy who nobody thought was going to turn into anything. It was just a throw in with Simone in the trade from Edmonton. And he's seen him take the reins when he wasn't around, by the way, take the reins, go with June Jones, turn himself really into something that Jeremiah has always known he can do what he's done, but to turn himself into that and to try and lead the team and then to have his ACL get torn, non-contact, they believe obviously in Dane. They know what they have in Dane. They're extremely fortunate to have Dane. He'll get a look. He'll get every opportunity. But I got to believe that if all things are relatively equal, that they're going to lean Jeremiah in that decision because he was the starter previously, because he has more CFL experience, and because I don't think Orlando Steinauer, and I don't think he'll ever say this, I just don't think Orlando Steinauer wants to see Jeremiah Masoli tear his knee, watch them get crushed in a Grey Cup from the sidelines, and then not start the following time that they get to hit the field. I don't think Orlando will allow that, and I think that he doesn't play favorites either, but I think he would lean naturally because of his demeanor towards seeing Jeremiah. I might be completely wrong on this one. Dane might come in, blow it away. Jeremiah might not look as good as we think he's going to. And you could make the argument that because he's such a player's coach that Orlando Steinauer would lean Dane because he wants him to be able to go into Winnipeg and beat them to start the season after losing the Grey Cup, right? So there's an argument that can be constructed both ways. I just believe that the one from Masoli is a little bit stronger.
Masoli adds things in the run game that few other guys in the CFL do, and Dane Evans does not. Just looking, adjusted interception rate last season was equal for these guys, both at 4%. Like, you could say Masoli throws bad picks, but you have to also say Dane Evans throws bad picks too. The first pass of the Grey Cup, like, oh boy, this was coming, and this game is that game was over when Banks got hurt. That's another story. But yeah, to me, that's Masoli. My guarantee for the Hamilton.
I got to say this about Banks being hurt in the Grey Cup. I will never forget this as long as I live. And it was the one moment where I was like, wow, I actually just did a good job sideline reporting. I did not know that was possible. I looked down the bench at Banks after he came off, and I saw him look at a trainer, and amongst however many thousands of people were there at McMahon, I read Brandon Banks' lips. Okay, there was this moment where there was a bunch of people wandering up and down the benches, and there was a moment where it was clear, and he turned, and I just happened to be in the right spot, and I saw him say, "It popped." And I read his lips, and when he went, "It popped," and I read his lips, I went, "Holy shit." And I immediately buzzed into the TSN national radio because I was doing the sidelines for the Ticats. And I said, hey, throw to me right now. And then Rod Black throws down. I said, hey, guys, Brandon Banks down here on the sidelines just came over, looked at the trainer, and said, it popped. I don't think he's coming back. Guys, back to you. And I was like, whoa, that was the first time I've ever done sideline reporting where I actually wasn't like, hey guys, well, earlier this week I was listening to, it's like the soft stories where you're kind of constructing them throughout the week. It's like, no, you throw that out the window and you stare at Banks. And I actually got something from him from that. So anyways, that was not a humble brag. That was just me. I'll never forget that moment of realizing A, the Ticats are screwed, and B, I know he's not coming back because I've never seen that look on Brandon's face. And I've never seen him say openly, like it broke, it popped, whatever it was. He said it, and it was just gone.
Yeah, and you can't come back from that with all the other injuries.
No.
My guarantee for the Hamilton Tiger Cats is I absolutely guarantee they will have the best record in the CFL. 14 games. I don't know how many they're going to win, but I think of it this way. Hamilton, 1, looks like the best team. 2, the West looks like any one of 4 teams could win it. So if the winner in the West ends up 9-5, I'm not surprised because there are some really nice teams in the West. To me, Hamilton is just, they're going to stomp. They got 4 games against the Argos. Come on. Hamilton's going to stomp, whether it's 11, 12, 13, or I was talking to Louis B this morning. He's like, hey, they might go 14-0. Well, that's the thing that'll keep them from winning 13 games is if they win 14 games. Hamilton is strong in just about every position. They have depth at just about every position. They have a multitude of offensive weapons and different kinds of weapons and different kinds of elite weapons on offense. At this moment, June 23rd, 2021, I have no idea what's going to stop the Hamilton Tiger Cats from having the best record in the league. I don't see it. I don't see it.
Yeah, I do wonder how much the emotional toll of all those Argos games wears on them now that we've actually seen the schedule. Because Toronto was such a mystery at this point. Like, they could come out and be this incredible passing attack with all these receivers and Arbuckle in and Dinwiddie running the show and tackling machines. The Nationals, be it Moamba or Judge at linebacker, and they got this ferocious pass rush and they got these DBs flying around the back end. Or they could come out and just be like all the other super teams that seem to get constructed in football, where somebody goes, let's smash it all together. And, oh, look, it didn't work. The chemistry wasn't there, especially coming out of a pandemic. Like, I don't care how much time you spend on Zoom. It's not real until you're in the room and you're in the film and you're working on the board and all those things that go into training camp. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, DT, because I wish, of all the different training camps that I wish I could be at, Toronto's probably number 1, but Hamilton's number 2. And a lot of that has to do with the Masoli and Dane Evans thing. But a lot of these training camps are going to be behind closed doors because they can't allow fans in and they don't have provisions for media. And that's disappointing because there's so many good storylines going in. But Hamilton, the competitive level is going to be established. It would have been established if there were fans there. Because it's behind closed doors and there's no CHCH cameras and no TSN cameras at training camp, the team has exclusivity on what is allowed to be seen from training camp in terms of video and production. Yeah. And I think there's going to be some battles behind closed doors because they know how good the roster is and they know how important this year is hosting the Grey Cup in Hamilton as well. So that's going to be an adventure, I think, for everybody on that roster to go through that training camp. And again, what we're talking about at the start here, I wonder who gets squeezed because there is so much talent there. And if somebody's wheels aren't turning the way they used to, they either the team has to make a decision or that player has to make a decision. And I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah. If they get to the start line with Banks, Addison, and Posey, it's over. It's over in the East. It's over in the East.
What do you got from Montreal?
Montreal, my guarantee for the Montreal Alouettes is that William Stanback will lead the league in rushing yards, but not rushing touchdowns. Stanback over 6 yards a carry last season. He was 6.1, including the playoffs. Andrew Harris was 6.0, including the playoffs. Stanback gets so many yards after contact. He's almost 4 yards after contact per carry, which is a crazy number. He's such a big body. Everybody here's seen him play. He's big, he's fast, he's strong. And to me, Montreal is going to need to, or at least choose to rely on that. We've talked about what year I think Vernon Adams is going to have regression-wise. I think they're going to lean on William Stanback, give him a ton of carries, maybe even Andrew Harris number of carries. So he will lead the league in rushing yards, but they're a sneak team when it gets down to the goal line. So Vernon Adams may well lead the league in rushing touchdowns with all those sneaks. So that is my prediction, that Stanback is the monster that I think he is.
Especially if there's a bonus in Stanback's contract for touchdowns in a single season over a 14, then they might really be a sneak team. And hell, if there's a sneak bonus for Vernon Adams Jr., that might be a Matthew Schultz quarterback sneak for all we know. Exactly. So they're going to start toying, I think, with the numbers a little bit there. But you almost took the words right out of my mouth on this one. My one big guarantee for Montreal is Stanback leads the league in carries. Okay, leads the league in carries. And the reason I say that is that it's similar to what you were just talking about, but my equation for a running back to lead the league in carries is either you have to just be such a dominant force that your team cannot ignore giving you the football as much as humanly possible. And that is Montreal. But at the same time, if the regression that you talk about with Vernon Adams Jr. happens, if the deep ball doesn't fire as much, if they are more interception prone as they should have been, because you've talked previously about dropped interceptions that Vernon Adams Jr. should have thrown, but were dropped by defensive backs, linebackers, otherwise. If there's a regression in the passing game and there's a dominant running back, what do I do as an offensive coach? I lean on the running back.
Yep.
So for me, that's why this screams he's going to lead the league in carries more than Andrew Harris. And I also believe that when you give William Stanback the ball, he gets better as the game goes on. I saw it in the game that he had against Hamilton last 2019 in week 4, I think it was, when he went crazy. And unfortunately, that was the game that Sean Thomas Erlington went down, because that was looking like a fantastic running back battle. But as the game went on, Percival Molson, third quarter, middle of the third quarter, end of the third quarter, he, like everybody else, was kind of wearing down and tackling that big body. And he was accelerating. He was running through guys. He was running through shoulder tackles. He was making moves in the hole. It seemed like when he gets into a rhythm where you're really feeding him the ball, and running backs always talk about that. And I think a lot of the time we take it as BS. We're like, you just want the ball because you're bored. You're tired of pass blocking. Sorry, you play in the CFL. You're going to pass block for 60 to 70% of the snaps. But when he gets the ball more, he gets the wheels turning really, really nicely. So I actually think that not only will he lead the league in carries, I bet you he'll have 2 games of 200 yards or more. Like that game that he had against Hamilton, you might have it there week 4 of 2019. I believe he broke 200. And at the end of the day, it didn't feel like he broke 200, because when he was getting the football consistently, it was probably 15 to 20 carries or more. When he was getting the ball consistently and he was going for the yards per carry average, he broke a 25-yard touchdown and a 15-yard this and a 20-yard that. But really, it was 8 yards a carry. It felt like just chunk. First down, puts you in 2nd and 2, gets the ball. Everybody's trying to tackle him before the first down marker. He runs 7 yards beyond it. Well, now he's got 8 yards and 9 yards on back-to-back carries. If he does that type of thing and they feed him the ball enough because of the situation of their offense that we're expecting, he could definitely ring off a couple of games. A random game against Ottawa where he goes for 200, and a game against a team from the West where he just goes crazy or something. So I think he's capable of that.
22 for 203 and 2 touchdowns against Hamilton in game number 21. So what's that, week 4?
Yep.
9 yards a carry, 8 yards after contact per carry that day. So that would seem to indicate he was hit at the line of scrimmage and went for 70 yards afterward.
To put this in context as well, for people who think I'm an idiot for saying he can go for 200 yards twice in a single season in a 14-game schedule, he did that against Hamilton. And the reason that I say it like that is because Hamilton was better against the pass than they were against the rush in 2019 defensively. But overall, they allowed the fewest points per game in the league. It was under 20. It was 19.1 or something like that. So the idea that a single running back could go for 200 yards when everybody at Percival Molson that night, as of the middle of the first quarter, knew, this is a William Stanback game. Like, he's going to win this for them if they're going to actually beat Hamilton. And Hamilton actually played pretty good offensively as well. Remember the Jalen Ackland tapping his toes down in the end zone in the front corner. And there was a lot of fun stuff that happened that night. But he did that to Simone. He did that to Ted Laurent. He did that to Dylan Wynn. Like, that front, and I understand the offensive line has had some evolution in Montreal, but that front in 2019, he ran through it, and then he ran through people, as you say, in the yards after contact. He could absolutely do that.
He also had the number 6 game in the CFL in 2019, 14 carries for $147. It was against BC, but it was at BC. If you get 10 yards a carry a game, why don't you have the ball more? I want to go back to that game and go, why did he not get 25 carries? Why was it only 14 when he's ripping off 10 yards a carry? And in that game, getting almost 5 yards before contact, that was a pretty solid blocking performance. Wow. Just on the base numbers from that one, only had to make 5 guys miss tackles. Stanback's a monster, and he's the one. He's NFL fans. He's the Derrick Henry. In my mind, as much as running backs make a difference, that guy absolutely makes a difference. I am very curious, Marshall Ferguson, to get your one big guarantee about the Ottawa Red Blacks, because I didn't want to do mine negatively, so I found something positive. What did you have for
mine?
Ottawa?
Is positive as well. Paul Lapalisse will return as head coach in 2022. That's my one bear guarantee. That's the positive spin that I have on this. I didn't want to make it to a spit take, but
that's awesome.
And the reason I say this is it doesn't matter what happens this year. This is weird as hell. They're coming out of a pandemic. They just got Matt Nichols in when they thought they were going to have Arbuckle. Jalen Saunders gets in a car crash, goes on the retired list. They need another year for their defense to evolve, I think, because they've got a lot of young talent. They've got some futures that they're waiting on to show up in that defense as well. So whatever happens this year in Ottawa, and I don't think it's going to be great. I don't think many people that are projecting the league think it's going to be great. But I do know that they didn't bring Paul LaPolice in to give him 14 games in a pandemic shortened season and then say, doesn't look like this is going to work out for us. So this is a very sheepish one as well, because this is a lock. Like, nothing is going to change this, and I know it. My one big guarantee, Paul LaPolice, best of luck in 2021. Hope to talk to you soon. I am also excited to talk to you as the head coach of the Ottawa Redblacks in 2022 and hopefully far beyond for your sake.
Give him and give Benavides some talent to play with in 2022. This is what I didn't want to go quite with something so on the nose. I went with Ottawa's leading receiver will have the lowest yardage total of any leading receiver in the CFL.
Yeah.
Just because I think unlimited esteem for Lapo and what he can do. But I look at that receiving core, and now we're down to RJ Harris and Brad Sinopoli. RJ Harris is going to lead the team in receiving, I would wager, but you're going to have to spread it around out wide, and whoever ends up taking that boundary wide receiver spot, they're going to have to spread it around. They're going to have to run the ball through Flanders. They're going to have to find something. Arbuckle's not there. Matt Nichols, pardon me, has been in his time with Lapo, short targets, get the ball out quick, that kind of thing. So I think what's the equivalent of 700 yards, 730 yards is the leading receiver for the Ottawa Redblacks, and it ends up being the lowest number for any team leader in the CFL.
Interesting. Yeah. How great would it be too if they just gave Brad Sinopoli like 150 targets? It'd just be
just
like
jam it in there.
Yeah, why not? Just give it a shot and see how it turns out. That would be fun for a lot of us that all love Brad Sinopoli. But I think that's fair to say. And it actually reminds me a lot too, Derek, of seeing when I put together the usage and production chart for running backs from 2019 across the CFL. Up at the top, it was like CJ Gable in Edmonton and Stanback in Montreal and John White in BC. And at the top of it all, it's Andrew Harris in Winnipeg. It's all these singular backs that are getting all these touches. And then there was Hamilton. And Hamilton had like 5 yellow dots, and they were all at the bottom of the scale. It's not that they weren't relatively productive. It's that they just didn't get touches. Why? Because they split it amongst Cameron Marshall, Anthony Coombs, Tyrell Sutton. I'm trying to think. Sean Thomas Arlington at the start of the year.
Braylon Addison did some running back.
Yeah, Addison got touches in the run game too. So of all those things added together meant that they were just all at the bottom because none of them had a chance to pull away. And like you're saying, they're going to have to spread it around. And the thing that I'm low key excited about that I hope other fans in the CFL are as well. We come in here and we talk on this podcast and on your radio show. And I know when I was doing my radio show, I would always, these are the things that I know. These are the things that I feel very comfortable about saying. But the joy of the CFL a lot of the time, and I always have to remind my co-host Kyle Mello of this too on Marshall Mello on Fridays, because he'll say, oh, that guy's gone and nobody's ever going to play that position or nobody's going to be that way. There are people that you can say that about where you can go, you know what, that's probably never going to happen again. But when I see a receiver like Jalen Saunders go down, my first thought is obviously, damn, I hope that guy's okay. The second thought is, did that just open the door to a BJ Cunningham who I know nothing about? Does that open the door to a DeVere Posey who I have to get introduced to, and then I learn their history a little bit, and then I go, wow, that guy's really, we learn a lot about players when there are opportunities. And Ottawa, if Marcel Desjardins, and let's be real about this too, Marcel is on the hot seat from the last couple of years. If Marcel has done a good enough job and his staff have done a good enough job of finding talent, Ottawa can give us a lot of new names in the CFL that we are not familiar with that might emerge as being really good players. Because there's not a lot expected of them. And if they come into their own, sure, they can win whatever amount of games, in and around 500 is probably the top end of what they're looking at based on the schedule and how kind of established other teams are. But when I see the way that they have the holes all over the place that they're trying to figure out, they're going to need to get some production from some different receivers, because I don't think there's a singular guy like a Burnham, Ellingson, Banks, otherwise that they can lean on and just go ahead with.
Yeah, Rafael Arujo Lopes, come on down. It's your time. I heard about you to start 2019. It's your time. I'm curious, Marshall, your One big guarantee about the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Sasky,
You'd be judged.
yeah, for Jardo, ups his short and intermediate passing attack. And the reason that I say this
Nice.
is I've been a believer in Jason Moss for a long time. I know that people make fun of the Gatorade throw and all of these other things but when it comes to coaching quarterbacking in the Canadian Football League, the guy just straight up knows what he's doing. Like, and he's got concepts that he understands. And I would imagine that there has been a breath of fresh oxygen into Jason Moss's coaching career here by going to Saskatchewan, because he knows how crazy it is and he knows the passion. He knows how he's going to be judged. I would imagine that this is a moment of motivation for him where he's saying, I got all this stuff and I get to apply it to something as malleable as Cody Fajardo. Like, I get to create kind of what Cody is really, truly, because let's be real about this, being so run heavy on first down like they were with Stephen McAdoo as the OC. You do that, and yes, he flourishes and he becomes the player that he was in 2019. But I think the real Cody Fajardo, the one that will become known as the CFL Cody Fajardo, going, because he was more of an NCAA style quarterback in his first real true year starting. I think you're going to see the progression now into professional football passer, which is different than professional football quarterback, because you can be a runner, you can be a passer, you can be a mix. Yes, he's going to run around a little bit. Yes, he's going to use his athleticism. Yes, they'll design all sorts of different QB run for him. But in terms of short and intermediate passing game and using progressions to get through reads and trusting your footwork and putting the ball on target all the time, Nick Arbuckle and Dane Evans, basically in 2019, were the guys that were the most accurate under a certain distance down the field. I know you said today on the Sports Cage when I brought this up that you had Trevor Harris as the most efficient, basically as the low ball passer rating. Yeah, and that is spot on. And I think that if you can get Moss to apply some of that Trevor Harris-ness, bring it to Fajardo, and apply it to the receivers that he has around him, there's the potential for something really, really solid there, because he's got that Arbuckle, Dane Evans, take care of the ball under a certain distance, be pinpoint. But now he's going to get these foolproof concepts that are passing concepts that are tried and true through decades in the CFL. And that's going to make him significantly better. So my guarantee for Saskatchewan is that his short and intermediate passing game will directly benefit from having Jason Moss.
I love it. And I take that and I combine it with something head coach Craig Dickinson said last week when he said Jason Moss will use Cody more in the run game. I went, yes, please. So that leads me to, I guarantee Cody Fajardo will have the equivalent of a 5,000-1,000 season. 5,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing, which I numbered it out for a 14-game season is 38-88 passing and 777 rushing. He's going to do it. His deep ball numbers were tops in the league. They probably come back to earth a little bit because deep ball is not consistent really year to year, at least not at the level that he did, whereas passer rating was 110. That doesn't continue to happen. But running the ball consistent, like you said, if they focus on that short and intermediate stuff, and all of a sudden Kyron Moore gets 60 yards after the catch. By the way, Shaq Evans is a monster. Jordan Williams-Lambert can really make some catches in tough spots, and they're going to, Mike Jones style from a couple of years ago, they're going to bust Justin McInnis free from that field wide receiver spot, and he's house calling it from their own 25. Equivalent of 5,000, 1,000 from Cody Fajardo this year.
How are we going to prorate? Is that the right term? Like, how are we going to extract? You already have calculators set up on everything to tell people projections the entire year on where they would be heading during a normal year?
Oh, no. I just took 5,000 divided by 18 games times 14 games gives me 38-88 for the season. So Fajardo will throw for 38-88 and run for 777. But let's just think of it as 5,000, 1,000.
Okay, yeah, I like it. That's that'll be a fun one to keep track of. What do you got for Toronto there, DT?
This is the one that's going to come back to bite me in the butt, or I will parade it around every town I visit calling CFL games this year. Charleston Hughes and Cordero Law will finish number 1 and number 2 in sacks in the CFL this year.
Oh, man. I love it.
Right?
I love it.
Right? It's very bold. Charleston was number 1 in the league in sacks last year. And I look at that Toronto roster and look at that Toronto defense. Those two guys starting at the end spot, I don't know how many they can keep behind them. of these guys whose names we know either from the CFL, Odell Willis, or the NFL. But I look at help in the middle in Drake Nevis and then the Canadian, whoever they throw in there. But I look at this and go, if I'm devising a defense and I have Enoch Mwamba and Cam Judge, two guys who can run everywhere and get to the ball carrier, you know what I want to do? I'm going to absolutely unleash my defensive ends who I both know can murder quarterbacks. Charleston murders quarterbacks. Cordero Law can murder quarterbacks. And I want those two just running wild after QBs this season. I want them surfing, snowboarding, dancing, whatever. If Cordero wants to pull back the Craig Road death blow chop, whatever celebration, I want that to happen for Toronto so bad because I think they can cover for it in other spots. So 1-2 in sacks, Charleston and Cordero. Write it down.
I love it because I think of Ja'Gared Davis, I think of Willie Jefferson, I think of even Jackson Jeffcoat being in the hunt for all those things. But yeah, it's absolutely plausible. I also, as soon as you start talking about them flying up the field and getting after, I'm like, is Toronto going to give up the most rushing yards per game in the league? Because if they're going to be flying up the field, then teams are going to just go, okay, we're tired of those guys murdering us. Let's go ahead and just pop a little inside shovel here to a slot back and have them turn up. Let's release the center and the guard and go get Muamba and Judge and then try to get to the second level type stuff, right? So
most outstanding Canadians are waiting to eat that stuff up.
If
Granted,
honestly,
missing tackles is a thing, but
but if they design a defensive system around defensive ends flying up the field and funneling everything into the middle tier linebackers, your Mac and your Will there, then yeah, they could absolutely create some havoc. It's again, part of the intrigue of this that we're not going to know because we don't have preseason games to even see the base format of it is we don't really know how these teams are going to structure. We all think that we know. Like, I think Dinwiddie's going to look a hell of a lot like the Calgary offense did when they play against Calgary week 1. I think Lapo's going to look a hell of a lot like Winnipeg when we saw them in the Grey Cup in 2019. Do I know either of those for sure? Absolutely not. Like, Lapo might show up and play 5 wide the whole game and go, 5-6 wide with a tight end instead of having Flanders back there for all I know. So, we'll see how this stuff shakes out. But yeah, they could get after it. For me, for Toronto, my prediction is that McLeod Bethel-Thompson plays in a game before week 6. And I'm not talking garbage time. I'm saying that he gets an opportunity, I think, and it might, I don't think it's permanent. Okay. So my guarantee for the Argonauts here is McLeod Bethel-Thompson gets in a game before week 6. And it's not because Arbuckle is a complete disaster. It's not because the wheels have fallen off and he can't play the game and they got to get him out of there. And McLeod, the job is yours and run with it. I think there might be either a second half or maybe even a start of a game where they say, we want Nick to take a step back here and actually see the game because there's a lot happening real quick in a weird year without as much on-field prep as we would usually like. So I don't know what the circumstances exactly will be, but I think McLeod is there and he'll get an opportunity by week 6. And then I think Arbuckle does become the consistent on-field guy. Honestly, we talked about this at length when McLeod signed back with the Argonauts. He's got the ability. They know that. And how much time does Nick get to really figure it out and be productive? If they lose a couple of games to start the year, McLeod might just get a start. But the thing is, too, if you put in the backup quarterback, and this is what the bad equation was in Ottawa in 2019, if you put in the backup like Jonathan Jennings was for the Red Blacks, and he throws 2 picks, well, then you go back to the starter, and then all of a sudden you're just flip-flopping like you're Kevin Glenn and Brandon Bridge in an Eastern Final in 2018. Like you're just randomly throwing people back and forth because Chris Jones just wasn't happy because KG didn't make it through. Brandon sporadic guys. And it's like, okay, let's find a middle road and go with it. But I think Toronto will do a bit of that, not back and forth, but they'll probably take a step back at some point early in the season for whatever reason it ends up being.
Yeah, I honestly wanted my guarantee to be that MBT would lead the Argos in passing, but I thought, 14 games and the starting quarterback and the coach know each other from a previous stuff. That one seemed a little too bold, but I mean, we've talked about my esteem for MBT. We had a podcast about how much we like McLeod Bethel-Thompson. So I'm with you that he's absolutely going to get some play this season. All right. The 2019 Grey Cup champions, as there is no reigning Grey Cup champion, I keep saying on Saskatchewan radio, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Marshall, what's your thought for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
Zach Collaros will retire before the season. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, jeepers, no.
Because I threw that one at you at the start of things. But I believe that Zach will be what he was to end. And this might seem like you're telling me your guarantee as a guy is going to be who he was the last time we saw him play. Wow, really bold. Congratulations. But what I'm saying here is Zach Collaros filled a need that Winnipeg had that I'm not even sure Matt Nichols could have filled, to be honest with you, by the end of that 2019 regular season and the 3-game playoff stretch. Chris Trevler obviously wasn't that guy, not that style of player, wasn't the right fit to give them what they needed. He was great at what he did. He was unbelievable as the number 2 coming in the playoffs and running all over Calgary. And yeah, it was amazing to watch. But Zach at the end of the season was 2 very specific things. He was an extremely high quality underneath passer who knew exactly where his checkdowns were. He knew where Andrew was. He knew where the little crossing routes were. He knew how to operate the offense. And that was with basically no time. The second thing that he was, Zach knows as well as anybody, I believe, including Mike Riley, Bo Levi Mitchell, all these quarterbacks that we talk about and all these flowery terms. Zach knows as well as any quarterback on second down how to kill you. And I don't mean kill you for a gain of 9 on 2nd and 8. I'm talking he will do the thing that you don't expect where he rolls 15 yards to his right and throws a 40-yard bomb down the sideline that makes you go, whoa, that looks like 2015 Zach Collaros. So if he continues those 2 things, because what he did in that playoff run, the Grey Cup, no vertical passing, didn't really push the ball much. But in those other playoff games, he only threw the ball deep, 4 or 5 times? He hit on most, if not all of them. Like, it was absurd percentage of effectiveness when he decided to push the ball vertically. So I think what he is at this point in Winnipeg with Andrew Harris, depending on what Buck Pierce decides to do with Andrew Harris in that style, I think what he's going to be is an extremely high efficiency passer that will challenge Trevor Harris for the king of the kind of what we're talking about with Cody Fajardo in the short and intermediate passing marks. Mm-hmm. I think he'll be that, and I think he'll be really efficient when he pushes the ball vertically, because that's what he was in 2019, and I believe that's what Zach Collaros will be for Winnipeg in 2021.
I hope the loss of Bryant Mitchell or the never getting Bryant Mitchell doesn't hurt that too badly. I hope if Darvin Adams is healthy, push, baby. I feel like I'm on an island with my Darvin Adams love. I have to couch this one correctly, my one big guarantee for Winnipeg, because I think Justin Medlock is the best kicker in the history of the CFL. And it seems like he's retired and they're going to the youngster Mark Leggio. I think Winnipeg's offense improves because they will not have Justin Medlock on their team. Medlock had 9 attempts over 50 yards last season. Guys, pretend Medlock's still in the league. All the kickers still in the league. Medlock has about 3 times as many 50-plus yards attempts as the next most in the league, right? You see it watching the games. They can treat offense differently because Justin Medlock can rein it in from 57. And you know what? We need a field goal from 63. You know what? Let's send Justin out, because why not? It's friggin' Justin Medlock. So the problem, and it's not probably maybe a nice problem to have, is when you get toward the edge of his field goal range and you get into that 50-yard field goal range, you start to go, you know what? We got this in our pocket. If you don't have it in your pocket, you have to get more aggressive. And I love the thought that it would get more aggressive around the other team's 45-yard line. And to me, that is just a recipe for success, because now Zach is 2nd and 8. We're not going to be conservative. We're going to go after it. It's 2nd and 10. We don't have to just give up and give Justin a field goal attempt. We're going to hammer the ball down the field. And I love the thought of that. I think aggression wins in football. I think aggression in the passing game. If you're 3rd and 22, you kick a field goal. But if you're 3rd and 2, you go for it. If you're 2nd and 8, try to get the first down. Try to keep this going. I think that's what happens with Winnipeg's offense. And I think independent of the Matt Nichols to Zach Collaros switch, I think just not having an unbelievable resource like Justin Medlock will pay big dividends for how Winnipeg attacks offensively.
And when I talk about Collaros being a killer as well, like that extends to 3rd down. I know I say on 2nd down that he knows how to beat you, but he'll take a 3rd and 2. The guy's got stones. He's been around. He's seen it all.
Yeah, he does.
And he'll take a 3rd and 2 and he'll throw it 35 yards down the sideline if he will do some of that stuff that It's a little bit of hero ball, but it never comes off as hero ball because he's always just got that very straight, direct Zach Collaros Greek guy look into your eyes where it's like, what? It's what I do. I'm a quarter. Like, this is what I do. He's so calm all the time that, yeah, they'll give him, I think, more leash than you would have gotten from the other quarterbacks in 2019 for sure. So there we go. 18 guarantees that are sure to be all 100% correct, as we love throwing percentages at you here on the breakdown. So
I want Argos fans to remember me when Charleston and Cordero finish 1-2. If they go 2-1 and you want to give me that, I'm okay with that. If this is not an exactor, but the parlay or whatever the horse racing one is where you can pick them in either way, I want that one. That's what I want for that.
You are going to have your DMs full of all your DN buddies, and they're going to be crushing you on that one. So I hope that you enjoy responding to those messages respectfully, because I foresee a Sean Lemon in your DMs. I foresee some other people that you have praised in the past. Willie's not really a DM guy, is he?
I don't think so. I think Willie just goes, I'm the man, and you can all come to me. Bring the mountain to Muhammad is kind of the thing with Willie, I think, because he deserves it. I don't know if that's how he is, but if it is, he deserves that.
Yeah, it's true. If Willie has any problems with anybody, I think he just slaps on the big old championship belt that has the big W on it, and he reminds you how good he is. Plus, if we ever sent Willie a DM, he would just knock it down, because that's what he does. He knocks
CFL
down.
record for DMs knocked down in the season, right?
It's so good. Thank you as always for checking in with us here on the breakdown. It's going to do it for this week. At DT on SC is where you can find Derek. He's got Sports Cage going. As always, I'm sure you got suits coming in. What do you got, Farhan, this week? There's lots of stuff going on across the league that you guys are covering. You had a ton of people that were lined up as guests on Tuesday with your show too.
Yeah, we had a ton of CFL guests. Chad Jeter recently retired. Derek Dennis, not retired, but not playing this season. Arash Madani loves talking CFL. Farhan on Wednesdays, Suits on Monday and Thursdays, Luke Molinder Mondays and Fridays. Damn. I wondered today, do we have too much CFL? And then I thought, no, that's a dumb thing to worry about. You can talk about the hockey game another time.
Yeah, it is loaded. I love what you guys do out there with your show. So again, it's the Sports Cage. If people want to follow you, again, 620 CKRM and at Sports Cage and at DT on SC. You don't need my social. Just go to @CF Perspective. That's where you can find us. And thank you to Fox 40, as always, for helping us out to bring you the podcast here. 15% off all your return to play whistle needs. Visit fox40shop.com and enter the promo code CFP15. And of course, don't forget our good friends at Sawdust City Brewing. We've had a lot of fun with them. I was actually talking with Sam Corbet about this last week. We got a deep catalog of tastings that are up there now on our YouTube page. We're getting to the point where we can basically send out our YouTube page and say, hey, if you're ever interested in buying a Sawdust City beer, listen to the guy who made it break it down for you, because we've got 15, 20-minute videos on just about all of them, which is fantastic. So if you want to try all sorts of different stuff from Sawdust City, they got something for absolutely everybody. Go to their website as well, sawdustcitybeer.com. Shop their wide variety of brews and learn more there, and use the promo code CFL. We've switched up CFL for you. Again, is that promo code to receive free shipping on first orders over $100. Available to Ontario residents only. Must be of legal drinking age. And I'm trying to twist Sawdust City's arm into creating a limited release, small batch Grey Cup beer, which they might actually be able to create. I don't know if they're legally allowed to call it a Grey Cup IPA by Sawdust City, but they are endeavoring to try to figure out what to do for a Grey Cup beverage that they can bring down to Hamilton and have in kegs, and we can take over a bar, assuming we're all allowed in bars by that point. We can do a trivia night. We can do a hangout. We can throw a bunch of CFP swag to you guys, and we can all enjoy the Grey Cup whatever that they make for us. So Sam he's pondering that as we speak. So we'll see where that all goes. But that's for further down the road. For now, we continue to set you up on the 2021 CFL season across Canadian football perspective. Thanks for being with us. And don't forget, Connor and Wade coming up on Thursday, myself and Kyle Mello on Friday, as we'll wind down the week and have some fun with you, play some of our favorite sound clips of the week, and discuss betting. It's a thing. Bill C2118 ends up getting past there, and so we'll discuss a bunch of that as well coming up on Friday. Thanks for tuning into the breakdown. Thanks to DT as always, and we'll talk to you right here on the breakdown next Wednesday.